The Galactic Council chamber hovered above a dying blue star, its light bending through layers of crystal and ancient alloy. Thousands of seats rose in silent arcs, filled with delegates from every known species. No one spoke. No one moved. At the center of the chamber stood a single figure. Humans. He was smaller than most in the room. No armor. No weapon. His hands were bound behind his back with a restraint field that hummed softly, as if even it found the moment uncomfortable. His face was calm, but not proud. Tired. Older than his years. Above him, the execution platform slowly rotated, projecting his image across the chamber. Translators whispered his species' name in a dozen languages, most of them unused for centuries. Humanity. The voice of the High Arbiter echoed. A species long believed extinct, or perhaps never important at all. A ripple of quiet amusement spread through the chamber. Some delegates leaned back. Others watched with mild curiosity, as one might observe a relic pulled from the dirt. The Arbiter continued. This individual claims to be a diplomatic envoy. He claims his species still exists. He claims consequences will follow if this council proceeds. The Arbiter paused, letting the silence stretch. The council finds these claims implausible. A few soft clicks of approval echoed. Humanity had been a footnote in old records. Death World survivors, short-lived, aggressive, and ultimately irrelevant. No empires. No lasting monuments. Nothing worth fearing. The human lifted his head. They were told, he said quietly. The chamber stirred. The Arbiter raised a clawed limb. You have already spoken more than was permitted, the Arbiter replied. Your warnings were reviewed. Your archives were searched. Your threats were weighed. The Arbiter leaned forward and found empty. The human did not argue. He looked past the Arbiter, past the delegates, toward the star below the chamber. Its surface churned violently, casting flickers of light across his face. They were told not to do this, he said again. Not to you. To themselves. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. The Arbiter's tone sharpened. Enough. This council does not execute out of cruelty. We execute to preserve order. You violated council law. You refused to submit your species' location. You disrupted interstellar stability with false alarms and forbidden signals. The Arbiter straightened. The sentence is final. Far from the chamber, on the edges of known space, something ancient stirred. The execution device descended slowly, a ring of pale energy forming around the human's chest. Medical monitors appeared in the air, tracking every heartbeat. This was not a quick death. It was meant to be seen. As the device powered up, a junior systems officer froze at his console. High Arbiter, he said, voice tight. We're seeing interference. The Arbiter did not turn. Interference from where? Unknown. Long-range sensors are receiving signal echoes. Old ones. Very old. The Arbiter waved a dismissive gesture. Background noise. Proceed. The human closed his eyes. The device activated. Pain flashed across his face, sharp but controlled. The chamber watched. Some delegates looked away. Others leaned in. Then the star below the chamber flickered. Just for a moment. Several heads turned. The systems officer swallowed. Sir, ancient subsystems are waking up. Protocols we don't. Silence. The Arbiter snapped. Finish it. The energy ring tightened. The human's breath caught. His knees buckled, but the restraint field held him upright. Across the chamber, a long-forgotten archive node unlocked itself. No one had accessed it in over 1,000 years. A single line of untranslated text appeared on a restricted display. Do not provoke. The officer's eyes widened. High Arbiter, I think you should see this. The Arbiter hesitated for the first time. What is this source classification? The officer checked, hands shaking. Pre-council. Origin marker. Human. The Arbiter turned slowly. The human opened his eyes. The device reached critical output. His heart stopped. For one full second, the galaxy was silent. Then every warning system in the chamber screamed to life. Lights flared red. Gravity shifted. Delegates cried out as the chamber's stabilizers fought to compensate for a sudden distortion in space-time. Report, the Arbiter shouted. The officer stared at his screen in horror. Automatic transmission detected, he said. It was encoded in the human biosigns. His death triggered it. Transmission to where? The officer looked up. To everywhere. Across the galaxy, ancient relays long thought dead began to pulse. Hidden stations powered up. Silent machines opened their eyes. And beyond the edge of mapped space, something answered. In the council chamber, a new signal appeared, clean, powerful, and unmistakably artificial. It did not ask permission. It did not identify itself. It simply announced its arrival. The translation resolved into a single sentence. Confirmation received. The arbiter felt something cold settle into his core. Confirmation of what? He whispered. The star beneath the chamber dimmed slightly, as if something massive had passed between it and the light. The human's body hung motionless in the restraint field, already forgotten. Outside the chamber's reinforced viewports, space itself began to bend. And somewhere far beyond the council's reach, humanity began to move. The alarms did not stop. They layered over one another, old systems screaming alongside newer ones, tones no living delegate recognized. The Galactic Council chamber shook as stabilizers struggled to correct a distortion no equation could solve. Space was bending, not tearing, not collapsing, bending, as if something unimaginably heavy had leaned against reality and was now pushing through. Delegates shouted in panic. Translation fields struggled to keep up as dozens of languages collided in fear. Shut down the alarms, the High Arbiter roared. They're not responding, technicians shouted back. These systems aren't under council control anymore. Above the execution platform, the human body remained suspended, lifeless, almost peaceful. No one looked at it now. Every eye was fixed on the chamber's outer viewports. The blue star below dimmed further. Not eclipsed, blocked. A massive shadow slid across its surface, swallowing light in slow, deliberate motion. Sensors tried to lock onto the object and failed. Distance readings contradicted one another. Mass estimates spiked, collapsed, then vanished entirely, as if the instruments themselves refused to finish the calculation. This is not a ship, one astrophysicist whispered. Ships don't do this. Then what is it? Someone demanded. Before an answer could come, the Council's primary communications array lit up with thousands of incoming alerts. Entire sectors were reporting the same thing. Stars dimming, gravity fluctuating, FTL lanes collapsing without explosions, without debris, just gone. Trade convoys vanished mid-transit. Patrol fleets dropped out of hyperspace into empty darkness where stars had been moments before. Across the galaxy, captains stared at their scopes in silence as space itself rearranged. Back in the council chamber, an elderly delegate from a long-lived species rose slowly from their seat. Their voice trembled, not with age, but with recognition. I have seen this before, they said. The chamber quieted, fear sharpening into attention. Before the council, the elder continued. Before the modern empires. When I was young, my people watched the sky change just like this. The High Arbiter turned. Explain yourself. The elder swallowed. We called it the passage. We thought it was a natural event. A cosmic storm that swallowed fleets and spat out ruins centuries later. They looked toward the viewport, where the shadow continued to move. But it was not a storm, the elder said. It was traffic. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Impossible, a military delegate snapped. No species uses such unstable. No species except one. The elder interrupted softly. Silence fell like a blade. The High Arbiter's gaze shifted back to the human corpse. You are suggesting, the Arbiter said carefully, that this is human technology. Yes, the elder replied. And not their weapons. The chamber seemed to grow colder. This is how they move. In the depths of council space, ancient beacons, never meant to be reactivated, lit up in sequence. They were not warning lights. They were acknowledgments. Buried stations, hidden inside dead moons and drifting between galaxies, came alive. Machines older than most civilizations began transmitting short, precise signals. All of them pointed inward, toward the Council's core. Military command centers scrambled to respond. Orders were issued, rescinded, reissued in panic. Deploy fleets to defensive positions. Which positions? An admiral shouted. They're not coming from a direction. That was the problem. Human arrival vectors did not obey the map. They emerged from places that should not connect. Dead systems, gravity wells, regions marked as unreachable. Human vessels did not tear through space with violence. They stepped through it, calmly, as if doors had been left unlocked long ago. The first confirmed visual came from a border world. A single human ship. It was massive, but not ornate. No glowing banners. No obvious weapon ports. Its hull was dark, layered, scarred by age rather than battle. It did not accelerate or maneuver. It simply arrived and stayed. The local defense grid locked on automatically, then shut down. Power failed across the system, not from damage, but from override. Reactors were placed into safe mode by commands that did not exist in any known language. A transmission followed. Not a threat, not a demand, a record. This system is now under observation. That was all. Panic spread faster than light. On the council floor, delegates demanded answers the Arbiter did not have. Open diplomatic channels. With whom? They must have command authority. They executed it. The Arbiter's eyes flicked again to the body at the chamber's center. For the first time, doubt cracked through the certainty that had ruled the council for centuries. A junior archivist broke protocol and spoke without being recognized. "There's more," she said, voice shaking. "The sealed files, they're opening themselves." "What files?" the Arbiter demanded. "All of them," she replied. "Human-linked records, warnings, treaties, fail-safes." She swallowed. They were never erased. They were locked behind conditions. And those conditions were? The Arbiter asked. The archivist looked at the human body. Confirmation of execution. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Across the galaxy, more human ships appeared, not in attack formations, not in armadas, but in precise positions around military infrastructure. Shipyards, command relays, weapons platforms. Never cities, never civilian worlds. Humanity was not invading. It was contained. An emergency council session was called within the hour, but attendance was already thinning. Several species had disconnected entirely, choosing flight over loyalty. The Arbiter stood alone at the center of the chamber, staring at cascading reports. "Why now?" they whispered. "Why respond like this?" The elder delegate answered quietly. "Because they warned us long ago," they said. They said they would never rule the galaxy. The elder's eyes reflected the dimming star, but they would never allow it to burn. Outside the chamber, the shadow finally passed, revealing the star once more, unchanged, unharmed. But the darkness it left behind lingered in every mind. Humanity had arrived, and they were not angry. They were focused. Somewhere far beyond the council's reach, vast fleets adjusted their course by fractions of degrees. Command AIs confirmed execution data, cross-referenced ancient laws, and activated protocols no one alive remembered authorizing. A single internal log updated across every human vessel. Status: restraint active. Objective: stabilization. Secondary objective: accountability. In the council chamber, the High Arbiter finally understood the mistake they had made. They had assumed execution would end a problem. Instead, it had begun a process. One that would not stop until the galaxy learned the difference between mercy and permission. And this time, humanity was watching. The galaxy did not explode into war. That was what terrified everyone. Hours passed, then days. Human ships remained exactly where they had arrived, silent, motionless, watching. No fleets advanced. No ultimatums were issued. No words burned. Instead, something far worse happened. The galaxy began to organize itself around human presence. Trade routes rerouted automatically, not by orders, but because navigation systems refused to plot courses near human-controlled space. Communications lagged near human vessels, not enough to fail, just enough to remind everyone they were being monitored. Every species felt it. Humanity was not attacking the galaxy. Humanity was changing its behavior. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, emergency sessions collapsed into arguments. Delegates accused one another of hiding information, of knowing more than they admitted. You knew the warnings were real. They were myths. You voted for the execution. I abstained. The High Arbiter said nothing. They stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by floating displays filled with cascading data. Each report was worse than the last, not because of destruction, but because of precision. Human ships had appeared near exactly 74% of the Council's military assets. Not 80. Not all. 74. That number haunted the analysts. "Explain," the Arbiter demanded. A strategic intelligence officer stepped forward, voice low. "They've isolated our enforcement capabilities. Fleets, command nodes, long-range weapons. Everything needed to project power. And the remaining 26%? The officer hesitated. Civil defense. Rescue. Evacuation. Medical. A chill spread through the chamber. They left us the parts meant to save lives, the arbiter said slowly. Yes, the officer replied. And removed the parts meant to threaten others. The implication was unbearable. Humanity had not come to win a war. They had come to decide who was allowed to fight one. Far from the council core, in a minor administrative world, a human transmission finally changed tone. It was not broadcast widely. It was delivered directly to planetary leadership, encrypted in a language that predated the council itself. The message was short. Submit archival access. Noncompliance will result in isolation. No threat. No countdown. Just certainty. The world complied within minutes. What followed spread fear faster than any fleet movement. Human analysts, human minds, both biological and artificial, began reviewing council history at a speed no other species could match. Corrupted treaties. Quiet genocides. Entire cultures erased under stability resolutions. And humanity remembered everything. Not with anger. With clarity. One by one, council-aligned regimes began losing access to shared systems. Voting authority froze. Resource allocations halted. Military budgets locked behind permissions that no longer existed. The council was being dismantled without a single shot fired. Inside the chamber, a junior delegate finally voiced the question burning in every mind. Why haven't they destroyed us? The elder delegate, the one who remembered the passage, answered. Because destruction is easy, they said. Control requires discipline. The arbiter turned sharply. You speak as if you understand them. The elder nodded slowly. My people once begged humanity for weapons, they said. We were losing a war. We thought humans would save us by teaching us how to kill better. And did they? The arbiter asked. No, the elder replied. They taught us how to survive without becoming monsters. Then they left. The chamber fell silent. Elsewhere, the first human fleet was repositioned. Not forward. Back. Sensors tracked the movement with confusion. They're withdrawing, a military analyst said. No, another corrected. They're creating space. Space for something else. Moments later, a second wave arrived. Not warships, but vast logistical constructs. Mobile fabrication rings. Medical arcs. Terraforming platforms. Human infrastructure. Entire systems were stabilized overnight. Famine zones received atmospheric correction. Long-polluted worlds saw their skies clear in hours. No announcements accompanied the work. Humanity did not demand gratitude. They did not ask permission. They acted as if this had always been their responsibility. The psychological impact was devastating. Species that had feared the council now feared humanity more, not because humans were cruel, but because they were capable without approval. A secret council meeting convened, limited to senior members only. We must respond, one leader hissed. If we allow this to continue, we will cease to exist. We already are, another replied. Just slowly. A military hardliner slammed a limb against the table. Then we strike first. Every fleet we have. Overwhelm them. The arbiter spoke for the first time in hours. And where? They asked quietly. The room went still. Human ships were everywhere and nowhere. They did not cluster. They did not form lines. There was no capital fleet to decapitate. They planned this, the arbiter continued. Long before today. Long before this council existed. A strategist whispered. Then why wait until now? No one answered. The answer arrived on its own. A human transmission was finally broadcast openly across the galaxy. No image. No voice. Just text. Execution confirmed. Review phase complete. A pause followed. Then a second line appeared. Determination in progress. Every species felt the weight of those words. On a distant human vessel, deep within a formation that spanned light years, an internal debate unfolded, not spoken, but calculated. Human ethics engines weighed probabilities, historical outcomes, and projected futures. The executed diplomat's record played silently. Not his death, his warnings. The systems confirmed what he had already known. The council was not irredeemable, but it was dangerous, and dangerous systems required boundaries. Back in the council chamber, the arbiter stared at the empty execution platform. The body had been removed hours ago, but the space felt heavier without it. We thought killing one human would end the problem, the arbiter whispered. The elder delegates shook their head. No, they said. It proved the problem existed. Across the galaxy, human fleets adjusted again, not to attack, but to close options. Escape routes narrowed. Illicit networks collapsed. Weapons dealers vanished from the stars. Every action carried the same message. You may live as you choose, but you may not rule through fear anymore. The galaxy was not burning. It was being reshaped. And for the first time since the Council's founding, its members understood the true horror of what they faced. Humanity was not here to conquer. They were here to correct. And once that process began, it would not stop halfway. The first shot did not come from humanity. It came from fear. On the far edge of Council space, a fortress world named Karuin activated its planetary guns. The system was old, proud, and heavily armed. Its leaders had built their identity on defiance. They had watched human ships surround Council assets for days and decided submission was a slower death than resistance. They chose to strike. The order was given in a sealed chamber, surrounded by generals who still believed numbers could solve everything. Fire on the nearest human vessel, the planetary commander said. Maximum output. Energy gathered along the planet's orbital cannons. The weapons were ancient but powerful, designed to crack moons and shatter fleets. For the first time since humanity's arrival, a targeting system locked fully and released. The beam crossed space in a blinding line of white. It never reached its target. Halfway between planet and ship, the beams simply folded. Not deflected, not absorbed. Folded inward, collapsing into a sphere of compressed light that vanished without sound. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the human ship moved. It did not charge weapons. It did not turn broadside. It rotated slightly, as if adjusting its view. A transmission followed, sent directly to Karuin's command authority. You have initiated lethal action, the message stated. Restraint protocol is no longer sufficient. The commanders stared at one another in disbelief. What does that mean? Someone whispered. They did not have time to find out. Space around Karuin began to ripple. Gravity surged and dropped in rhythmic waves, not violent enough to tear the planet apart, but precise enough to cripple everything built above its surface. Orbital platforms failed first. Defense satellites lost alignment and drifted harmlessly into decay orbits. Shipyards froze as their power grids shut down simultaneously. Inside the planet's core, reactors went dark, not catastrophically, but deliberately, as if guided into safe shutdown by an unseen hand. Cities remained intact. The atmosphere remained stable. Only weapons failed. Across the system, human ships repositioned with flawless coordination. They formed no formation the Council recognized. Instead, they created invisible boundaries, zones where hostile action simply became impossible. Karuin's leaders screamed for reinforcements. None came. Other Council fleets had watched the engagement. They had seen the first shot. They had seen the response. And they had chosen not to follow. Within hours, word spread faster than any broadcast. Humanity had not fired back. Humanity has removed the ability to fight. Back in the Council chamber, the news struck like a physical blow. Delegates shouted over one another as reports streamed in. They neutralized an entire fortress system. Without casualties. That kind of control is impossible. The High Arbiter stood frozen, watching the footage again and again. No explosions. No wreckage. Just silence where power had once lived. They crossed a line. A hardliner snarled. This is an act of war. No, the elder delegate said quietly. This is an act of enforcement. The Arbiter turned sharply. Enough. What happens next? The answer came from humanity itself. A galaxy-wide transmission activated. Not emergency channels, not military frequencies, but civilian networks. It bypassed Council filters with ease. For the first time, humanity spoke to everyone. The voice was calm, genderless, unemotional. This action was reviewed, it said. It was found to be unnecessary. Billions listened in silence. The system known as Karuin remains under protection. Its population is unharmed. Its leadership has been restricted. The message paused, as if allowing the words to settle. Further hostile actions will result in expanded corrective measures. No threat followed. No list of punishments. The absence of detail was worse than any warning. Across the galaxy, panic shifted into something else. Understanding. Humanity was escalating. but not emotionally, not impulsively. Each response was measured, deliberate, and perfectly proportioned. They were not angry. They were done waiting. In a sealed council archive, another layer unlocked. Old recordings played themselves without request. Images of early contact. Human representatives standing in chambers long destroyed, offering cooperation, shared law, shared restraint. Then the same recordings showed council votes rejecting those offers. Again and again, a junior archivist watched the footage with trembling hands. They tried, she whispered. They tried so many times. Yes, the elder delegate replied. And each time, we taught them the same lesson. What lesson? She asked. That we only listen when we are afraid. Humanity's next move shattered any remaining illusion of distance. A human ship appeared inside the council's core system. Not at the edge, not after warning. Inside, it emerged between defense grids, inside sensor shadows no technology was supposed to reach. The chamber's viewports darkened as its silhouette crossed the central star's light. Delegates screamed. Security forces raised weapons they knew would not work. The ship did not fire. A transmission activated, local this time, addressed only to the council chamber. We are present, the voice said. The High Arbiter felt their limbs weaken. You violated our sovereignty, the Arbiter said, forcing their voice steady. The response was immediate. Sovereignty requires accountability, the voice replied. Your authority is under review. The ship remained motionless, dominating the sky like a judgment that could not be ignored. Outside the chamber, evacuation traffic spiked. Species fled council space in record numbers, abandoning titles and alliances alike. Inside, something finally broke. A delegate fell to their knees. We surrender, they cried. We will comply. Just tell us what you want. There was a long pause. When humanity answered, the words were not what anyone expected. We want what was promised, the voice said. The Arbiter swallowed. Promised when? At your founding, humanity replied. Protection without tyranny. Order without erasure. The ship's lights shifted slightly. No weapon charge, just a change in posture. You failed, the voice continued. Correction is now required. Around the chamber, displays changed. Names appeared. Votes. Executions. Hidden wars. Every crime the council had buried now stood in full view. Delegates cried out as their past decisions followed them like ghosts. This is impossible, the Arbiter whispered. No, the voice replied. It was inevitable. Beyond the council chamber, human fleets began a new movement. No containment this time. Preparation. They were no longer just watching. They were deciding. And for the first time since humanity's arrival, the galaxy felt something sharper than fear. It felt the edge of consequence. The galaxy did not sleep. No one did. Every species watched the stars, waiting for the moment restraint finally ended. Human ships held their positions with silent patience, but their presence pressed on every mind like gravity. Even worlds untouched by containment felt it, an unspoken understanding that the age of distance was over. Inside the council core system, panic reached a breaking point. The appearance of the human vessel inside sovereign space shattered the last illusion of control. Council defense grids stood active but useless, like ceremonial weapons left out of habit rather than hope. No one dared fire. Karuan had taught the galaxy what happened when fear chose violence. The High Arbiter convened an emergency session, but fewer than half the seats filled. Many species had already withdrawn their delegates. Some fled council space entirely. Others shut down all communications, choosing ignorance over accountability. Those who remained understood why they stayed. They had nowhere left to hide. The human ship outside the chamber did not move. It did not broadcast again. Its silence was worse than threats. Every second stretched like a held breath. Finally, the Arbiter spoke, their voice carrying across the chamber. What does humanity want? They demanded. Territory? Tribute? Control? The answer did not come from the ship. It came from the archives. Across the chamber, ancient projectors activated on their own. Images flooded the air, records no delegate had ever voted to reveal. Forgotten wars. Secret exterminations. Entire species erased and labeled as unstable variables. The chamber filled with whispers of horror. These records were sealed, a delegate stammered. Yes, the elder replied. By us. The projections continued, moving through centuries and moments. Each image showed the same pattern. When a species grew inconvenient, the council acted. Quietly, efficiently, permanently. Humanity appeared again and again in the records, not as conquerors, but as observers, advisors, mediators, ignored every time. The arbiter's limbs trembled. You could have stopped us, they said weakly. You had the power. The human voice finally returned, calm and precise. We did, it said, by leaving. The delegates stared in disbelief. You abandoned the galaxy, someone shouted. No, the voice replied. We trusted it. Silence fell. We believed the council would mature without us, the voice continued. That fear would give way to law. That power would teach restraint. The human ship's silhouette shifted slightly, as if turning its attention fully to the chamber. We were wrong. Across council space, something changed. Human fleets activated new protocols, not attacks, but executions of authority. Council enforcement networks collapsed. Judicial AIs were locked out of their own systems. High-ranking officials found their access codes revoked by permissions that outranked every law they had written. The council was no longer in charge. On dozens of worlds, populations poured into the streets, staring up as human vessels repositioned overhead. No weapons fired. No threats issued. But old rulers vanished overnight. Some were arrested by their own people. Others fled and were intercepted quietly, without spectacle. Entire regimes collapsed in hours, not through violence, but through exposure. Humanity did not kill leaders. They removed protection. One world resisted. A council-aligned empire, built on conquest and forced labor, refused to comply. Their fleets mobilized in defiance, broadcasting declarations of eternal sovereignty. Human analysts reviewed the data. Then they acted. For the first time since arrival, humanity destroyed something. The Empire's central military star, an artificial sun powering its war industry, collapsed inward under precise gravitational manipulation. The star did not explode. It dimmed, cooled, and died. Factories shut down instantly. Fleets lost power. The Empire's military ceased to exist in a single moment. No cities burned. No civilians died. The message was unmistakable. Humanity would not destroy civilizations, but it would erase the tools used to terrorize others. Fear spreads faster than light. Species that had once bowed to the council now turned toward humanity with a mix of dread and awe. Old enemies called ceasefires without negotiation. Long-frozen conflicts ended overnight, not out of peace, but out of shared understanding. There was no hiding anymore. Back in the council chamber, the High Arbiter collapsed into their seat. We thought ourselves eternal, they whispered. You were stable, the human voice replied. Not just. The elder delegate closed their eyes. What happens now? They asked. The answer came not as a speech, but as a galaxy-wide directive. Humanity released the judgment framework. It was not a government, not an empire. It was a set of boundaries, clear, enforced, absolute. No species could exterminate another. No government could hide mass violence behind secrecy. No ruler could claim order as an excuse for erasure. Enforcement would be automatic. Appeals would exist. Defiance would be corrected. Humanity would not rule, but it would watch. Across the stars, reactions varied. Some celebrated. Some mourned. Some cursed humanity as tyrants worse than the council. Humanity did not respond. They did not need approval. On a distant human command vessel, ethics engines recalculated probabilities. The cost of intervention was immense: resources, time, moral burden. But the alternative had already been proven. The executed diplomat's final report was replayed one last time. He had known the outcome. He had accepted it. His death had not been a sacrifice meant to spark war. It had been a key. Back in the council chamber, the Arbiter looked at the empty execution platform and finally understood the depth of their mistake. They had believed killing one human would silence a species. Instead, it had summoned a civilization that had mastered the hardest power of all: restraint. Outside the chamber, the human ship finally moved. Not forward. Away. It retreated just enough to remind the galaxy of a truth it would never forget. Humanity did not need to stand over them. The rules were already written. And if the galaxy chose to break them, humanity would return. The galaxy expected celebration. It expected screams, riots, revolutions, or at least relief so powerful it would crack centuries of fear. Instead, What followed the fall of the Council's authority was something far heavier. Silence. Not the silence of terror, but the silence of beings who had lived too long under command and no longer knew how to move without it. Across former Council space, governments froze. Administrators waited for orders that never came. Military officers stared at inactive command screens, unsure whether to disband their forces or cling to habits that had defined their lives. Humanity did not fill the void. That, more than anything, unsettled the galaxy. Human fleets withdrew from visible positions around civilian worlds. Containment zones loosened. Trade routes cautiously reopened, though navigation systems still refused to plot aggressive maneuvers. The invisible boundaries remained, but they no longer pressed inward. It felt like being watched and trusted. On dozens of worlds, emergency councils formed. New ones, unaffiliated with the old regime. Species long silenced by the Galactic Council spoke publicly for the first time. Stories poured out. Purges disguised as relocations. Cultures erased quietly. Entire histories rewritten. The truth spread faster than fear ever had. And with truth came anger. Some demanded vengeance against the former Council species. Others called for humanity to rule outright, to take control before chaos could bloom. Protests filled city centers, not against humanity, but against uncertainty itself. Humanity answered none of it. They were not absent. They were waiting. Inside a massive human command construct drifting between galaxies, human decision systems processed the fallout in real time. Millions of simulations ran in parallel, modeling futures where humanity intervened too much and futures where they did not intervene enough. None were clean. A human commander stood before a projection of the former council chamber. The image was archived, silent now, empty seats gathering dust. "They want us to lead," an aide said. "Many of them." The commander shook their head slowly. "They want us to decide for them," they replied. "That's what got them here." In a former council world known for legal doctrine, an assassination shattered the fragile calm. A deposed official was killed by civilians seeking justice. Within hours, retaliatory violence threatened to spiral into civil war. Human systems flagged it immediately. For the first time since the Judgment Framework was released, a human vessel descended into a populated atmosphere. The ship did not announce itself. It did not deploy weapons. Instead, it projected a single signal across the planet. Violence escalation detected. Intervention required. The atmosphere itself seemed to still. Gravitational dampening fields activated across major cities, not enough to trap anyone, but enough to make large-scale violence physically difficult. Energy weapons failed. Kinetic weapons lost effectiveness. Fighting became exhausting. Then human mediators arrived. Not soldiers. People. They walked openly through streets filled with tension, unarmed, unarmored. They spoke calmly, not as rulers, but as witnesses. "You are angry," they said. "You have a reason. But if you choose slaughter now, you will become the proof that fear was right." The words struck deeper than any threat. The violence slowed, then stopped. The assassins were detained, not executed. Given trial, given voice. The world did not burn. Across the galaxy, similar incidents followed. Each time, humanity responded the same way. They did not punish rage. They constrained it. And slowly, the galaxy began to understand the difference between mercy and weakness. Back in the remnants of the Galactic Council space, the High Arbiter remained under observation. Not imprisoned, not free, simply present. Humanity allowed them to speak. The Arbiter addressed a public forum for the first time without authority shielding their words. "We believed order required fear," the Arbiter admitted, their voice stripped of ceremony. "We believed the galaxy would tear itself apart without us." They paused. "We were wrong." The admission rippled outward, transmitted across countless worlds. Some listened with bitterness, others with relief. The Arbiter continued. "We mistook control for peace. And when a species warned us otherwise, we silenced it." The image of the executed human diplomat appeared behind them. Not as an accusation, as a reminder. "We did not fear humanity's strength," the Arbiter said quietly. "We feared their restraint, because it made our choices look small." The broadcast ended. Humanity did not comment. They did not need to. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. New coalitions formed, fragile, imperfect, real. Species negotiated openly, knowing secrecy was no longer safe. Old rivals shared data, not because they trusted one another, but because hiding was now impossible. Human oversight remained light, but absolute. Every attempt at genocide, mass enslavement, or hidden extermination was stopped before it began, not by fleets, but by systems that simply refused to allow such plans to function. Weapons designed for terror failed silently. Supply chains collapsed for those who tried. The galaxy learned a brutal truth. You could still be cruel. You just could not scale cruelty anymore. Some called humanity tyrants. Others called them guardians. Humanity accepted neither title. In a distant human archive world, a memorial was completed quietly. No ceremony. No broadcast. One name was added to a long list. The diplomat. His role was finally made public, not as a martyr, but as a switch. He had volunteered knowing the council would kill him, knowing that only undeniable proof of execution would awaken the safeguards humanity had buried long ago. He had not wanted revenge. He had wanted boundaries. In the former council chamber, now empty and powerless, light from the blue star filtered in once more. The star still lived. The chamber still floated. But it meant nothing now. Authority had shifted away from thrones and into rules that could not be bent. Beyond the edge of known space, human fleets began their slow withdrawal, not leaving entirely, but stepping back into shadow. Watching, waiting. The galaxy breathed again, not freely, but carefully, because it now understood something it had never learned under the council. Peace was not the absence of force. It was the presence of consequences. And humanity had chosen to carry that weight alone. Time passed. That alone felt impossible. For the first time in recorded galactic history, centuries-old conflicts did not reignite after a collapse of power. Borders shifted through negotiation instead of war. Armies downsized not because they were defeated, but because they were no longer useful. And still, everyone waited. Because humanity had not finished. Deep within former council space, a final gathering was called. Not by decree, not by force, by invitation. Every species received it. Attendance is voluntary, the message stated. Outcome will affect all. The location was the old council chamber. Many refused to go. Some feared a trap. Others feared judgment they could not escape. But enough arrived that the chamber filled once more. This time without hierarchy. No elevated seats. No central throne. Just equals. The chamber felt smaller without authority amplifying it. Humanity arrived last. Not in fleets. In presence. A single human delegation entered the chamber physically. No weapons. No guards. No armor. Just people that frightened the galaxy more than warships ever had. The elder delegate from earlier cycles spoke first, their voice echoing softly. Why bring us here, they asked. A human stepped forward. Older. Scarred. Calm. Because this is where the mistake was made, the human said. And because it must end where it began. Murmurs spread. The council is already gone, a delegate argued. Its power was destroyed. Its systems were dismantled. What remains? The human did not hesitate. The idea that someone else should decide for you. Silence followed. Across the chamber, former rulers shifted uncomfortably. Revolutionary leaders stiffened. Even those who had suffered under the council felt the weight of the statement. We are not here to replace it. The human continued. And we will not stay to guide you. That caused an outburst. You cannot leave now. You broke the old order. You changed everything. The human listened without interruption. Yes, they said when the noise died down. And that is exactly why we must step away. Fear rippled through the chamber. Humanity leaving meant uncertainty. It meant responsibility. It meant no final shield to hide behind. You will watch, a delegate accused. You will intervene. We will, the human replied. Only if the same line is crossed again. The words hit like a physical force. Someone asked the question no one wanted answered. What line? The human looked around the chamber, meeting dozens of eyes. Erasure, they said. Extermination. Systems designed to make suffering efficient. A pause. You may hate one another. You may fight limited wars. You may fail. The human's voice hardened slightly. But the moment you attempt to scale cruelty, to make it clean, quiet, or invisible, we return. The chamber went cold. A former council legalist rose slowly. And if we refuse this arrangement? They asked. The human nodded, as if expecting the question. Then we isolate you, they said. Completely. Permanently. No threat followed. No explanation. Everyone understood. Humanity was not offering rules. It was offering final boundaries. Another delegate spoke, trembling. You hold all the power. Why not take control? Why trust us after everything? The humans' answer was immediate. Because we tried control once, they said, and it broke us. The chamber fell into deep silence. We learned something the hard way. The human continued. If peace requires someone to stand above everyone else forever, then peace is already dead. Across the galaxy, billions listened as the final declaration transmitted live. Humanity announced the end of the judgment phase. Containment systems would remain dormant but active. Oversight would become automated. Human fleets would withdraw beyond mapped space, leaving only watchers too small to dominate, too hidden to threaten. The galaxy would govern itself and live with the consequences. The former High Arbiters stood slowly, stripped of power, stripped of protection. You will be remembered as tyrants, they said bitterly. The human met their gaze. So were you, they replied calmly. The difference is, we know it. The Arbiter had no answer. When the session ended, humanity left the chamber without ceremony. No applause followed. No cheers. Only relief. And fear. In the months that followed, the galaxy struggled. Some alliances collapsed. Some wars reignited briefly before stopping, because escalation simply failed. Weapons jammed. Fleets lost coordination. Logistics fell apart when plans crossed invisible lines. It became clear that humanity had not removed war. They had removed genocide. Slowly, painfully, civilizations adapted. New laws emerged, written with the understanding that someone was always watching, but not judging intent. Only outcome. Children grew up learning a new truth. The worst thing you could do was not lose a war. It was to convince yourself that no one would stop you. Far beyond the edge of known space, human fleets settled into silence. Systems powered down. Command structures dissolved into long-term observation protocols. Humanity faded again. Not into myth. Into memory. In a quiet archive world, a final entry was recorded. Council status. Defunct galaxy status. Unstable but viable humanity status. Withdrawn by choice. A final note was appended, short, precise, and intentionally public. We will not save you from yourselves again. But we will not allow you to destroy everything either. The galaxy learned to live with that truth. And for the first time in its long, violent history, it began to grow up. The galaxy believed it had learned. That was the mistake. For decades after humanity withdrew, the stars remained quiet. Trade flourished under the new boundaries. Conflicts still happened, but they stayed small, contained, inefficient. No species dared to build weapons of erasure. No ruler spoke openly of extermination. Humanity became a lesson instead of a presence. And lessons, over time, fade. On the outer fringe of mapped space, beyond former council borders, a coalition quietly formed. It called itself the Ascendant Compact, an alliance of ambitious powers who believed the galaxy had become weak. They studied the failures of the past carefully. They did not plan genocide. They planned something worse. Control without extinction. Their weapon was not a fleet. It was a system, a network of artificial stars, energy anchors designed to subtly reshape gravity, trade, and communication across entire regions. No worlds were destroyed. No species erased. Instead, entire civilizations found themselves economically strangled, technologically frozen, and politically dependent. It was domination disguised as stability. The compact leaders congratulated themselves. They had found the loophole. Humanity did not return. First, across affected systems, suffering spread quietly. Food shortages caused by trade manipulation. Medical collapses blamed on market corrections. Rebellions crushed not by weapons, but by access denial. Billions suffered. And still, humanity remained silent. The galaxy began to whisper. Maybe the stories were exaggerated. Maybe humanity had finally left for good. Maybe restraint had limits, and those limits had been reached. In the ruins of the old council chamber, now preserved as a historical site, a young scholar studied archived warnings. She noticed something others had missed. The line humanity had drawn was not about death counts. It was about intent. She transmitted her findings in secret, but the message traveled slowly. Too slowly. The Ascendant Compact activated the final phase. Their artificial stars synchronized. Space across 3 sectors began to destabilize, not explode, not collapse, but lock into rigid gravitational patterns. Entire regions became prisons. Escape was impossible. Resistance is meaningless. The galaxy did not burn in fire. It burned in silence. That was when the first human signal appeared. It did not interrupt broadcasts. It did not override systems. It simply arrived everywhere at once. Review complete, the message stated. Across compact command centers, screens froze. Control systems stopped responding, not shutting down, but refusing new instructions. Panic spread instantly. No, we stayed within the rules. We didn't exterminate anyone. We didn't cross the line. Far beyond the galaxy's edge, humanity stirred. This time, they did not arrive gently. Space tore open across thousands of points simultaneously. Human fleets emerged not as isolated observers, but as a unified front spanning light years. Their ships were different now, larger, darker, shaped by centuries of restraint turned inward. The galaxy felt it. Stars dimmed not from blockage, but from fear. The Ascendant Compact scrambled its fleets, activating weapons meant to enforce submission. None of them fired. Human systems did not disable weapons. They disabled authority. Command hierarchies collapsed as permissions vanished. Leaders found themselves unable to issue orders, unable to access resources, unable to command loyalty. Entire governments unraveled in minutes. A single human transmission followed, addressed only to the Compact's leadership. You did not violate the letter, the voice said. You violated the purpose. The Compact's leaders pleaded. We created order. We prevented chaos. We kept the galaxy stable. The response was immediate. You made suffering efficient, humanity replied. That is worse. For the first time since their return, humanity did not stop at containment. They were dismantled. Artificial stars were unmade, not exploding, but unraveled at the atomic level. Energy fields collapsed gracefully, restoring natural gravity. The process was precise and irreversible. The Compact's power vanished overnight. But humanity did not stop there. They released everything. Every hidden document. Every suppressed metric. Every quiet calculation that had measured profit against pain. Across the galaxy, populations saw the truth in raw, undeniable form. Civilizations rose against their oppressors without human prompting. Humanity did not intervene. They watched. The galaxy burned, not in flames, but in revelation. Empires collapsed under the weight of their own lies. The leaders fled. Some were captured. Others vanished into obscurity. And humanity? Humanity did not punish them. They did something far more terrifying. They left them alive. When the fires of rebellion finally cooled, humanity broadcast one final message. This time, it was not calm. It was tiring. This was the last correction, the voice said. There will not be another. Across the stars, even the bravest species felt something tighten in their cores. We have carried this burden long enough, humanity continued. We will not do it again. The fleets began to withdraw, but not into shadow. They withdrew out of reach. Beyond space the galaxy could map. Beyond systems any civilization could follow. Humanity was not leaving the galaxy. They were leaving responsibility behind. The final words echoed everywhere, recorded into every archive, taught in every future language. You are free now. Truly free. What you become next, it will not be our fault. Then the human fleets vanished. Not fading. Gone. For the first time since the execution that had awakened them, the galaxy stood alone. No watchers. No boundaries. No second chances. In the old council chamber, the blue star finally died naturally, its long life complete. The chamber drifted, powerless and empty, a relic of fear and control. The galaxy did not cheer. It mourned, because only now did it understand the truth. Humanity has never been the galaxy's weapon. They had been its conscience. And consciences, once ignored too many times, eventually walk away. The stars burned on. This time, without mercy waiting in the dark.